Hi, everyone. Good morning. Today, I'm going to be looking at a rum from the past. Now, this is a rum that remains in my collection to this day that I bought in about 2010. It's the Cuban Legendario Anejo. They don't no further qualifications. Now, I had reviewed this first in 2010, 2011. It's no longer for sale. I think really this should be a Romaniacs entry, to be quite honest with you. But I also wanted to go back and just put a video to the verbal review that I have. And what I'm going to do, instead of rewriting a review from scratch, which I don't really want to do, is because then I can't do a reassessment if you can't buy it. What would be the point, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to update review number 6 and I'm going to put that in the show notes so that you can get some additional details that I had not put there back in 2011 when I posted the first review of this thing. The rum, as I said, is from Cuba. It's 40%. It is column still distillate, so far as I'm aware, and it is a blend of 1, 4, and 6-year-old rums, as well as a little bit of a 4 to 7% ABV Solera that they then dialed. They dialed everything down to 40%. No idea of what the components are, which is to say how much of each one. And even though it is made in Cuba, apparently the distillation has been farmed out to a number of different distilleries. And then they kind of like put it all together. The bottling is primarily done, and marketing is certainly done in Spain and Europe for the most part. I don't see many of these, if any, here in Calgary at this point, so I don't know if it's still available. And to be honest with you, I haven't checked. I just went down into the basement. I went to my stocks. I said, oh, okay, I haven't done this for a while. Let me take a look at it. Right, tasting notes. I'm going to go into that before I give you some long, drawn-out backstory here. All right. The one thing you have to know about this rum is that they have added some Muscatel wine after the aging. So basically, once they take the 146 and the Solera and they kind of like meld that together, age it for 15 days, they then add some Muscatel. No idea how much, all right, to kind of like round things off, put some sweetening. I have a feeling this is something of an experimental. I could be wrong about that. None of the current iterations of the company suggest that they do anything like that right now. So, I mean, that was like, 14, 15 years ago. So what do I know, right? The thing is, though, the Muscatel really makes a statement for itself, far too much as far as I'm concerned. So there's a sort of like a deep and cloying fruitiness to it, like overripe papayas, like mangoes that are really squishy and really oversweet, grapes that have gone off, apples that are definitely past their sell-by date. Even, if you can believe this, the Australian Bundaberg. This is the original, not any one of the fancy variations they do these days. And none of these things are particularly work well together. There's a little bit of brine, some muskiness, a little bit of salt. Yes, there is that. There's honeys, dark sugars, and there's a little bit of the tannins of oak, not enough to really kind of balance everything off. And yes, there's a little bit of citrus in there as well. Yeah, all you can tell is pretty much that this thing has been aged, and to some extent, there's perhaps there's even some Coca-Cola in here. Who the fuck knows what they do all those years ago? But tasting, that might be different. Let's take a look. It's been a while since I've tried this. Well, it's a bit thin. Salty, not so sweet. The Muscatel now kind of like dials itself down a bit, and it feels reasonably okay, kind of robust. It's smooth enough, which is to say that it doesn't bite your ass off going down, leaving. It kind of like has that sense of Coca-Cola, of cigars, of tobacco, damp tobacco, leaves, oak, that kind of thing. There's a nice kind of like smoky caramel toffee flavor that I quite like, and there's the fruits, those rotten fruits that I described before. Yeah, those are still there, but they're balancing off much better. So in other words, here the palate is actually better than the nose was. Usually it's the other way around, right? And the Muscatel is again there. It's now this is a black, quite sweet variety of grape, and those overripe fruity tastes that still kind of like stay there. But thank God they take a bit of a background step here. It kind of unbalances the whole thing in a way that I don't particularly like, even though I got to be honest, this thing is really quite original. You're not going to be disappointed with it if you're looking for something off the beaten track. This is absolutely correct, right? So my opinion of it is that they didn't need the Muscatel. They may have done it as an experimental, and they may have just simply just tried to play around a bit and put it there. Like I said, this thing isn't being made anymore. Right. And I don't know that many Americans who would have this brand, given the ongoing embargo, completely pointless in my view, of Cuba. But if you have and you've tried it, then by all means, give me a shout and tell me what's going on. Okay, so you can stop here if that's what you want. I can't remember how much I rated this thing at. It wasn't really that impressive. Back in the day, I rated it at 7 to 6. I wouldn't go too far away from it. Maybe 7 to 7 because my palate has changed a bit and I can appreciate aspects of it more than I did before. But at the end of the day, though, I think 77, 78 might be just about as high as I'm prepared to go with this. It ain't going to crack it. Sorry, that's just never going to happen. If that's all that you wanted to know, then you can stop here. The rest of this is going to be talking a little bit about the company. Now, as we all know, Cuban rum companies are all kind of part of the governmental monopoly or the governmental control of the rum industry, as with everything else. I mean, the old socialist / communist tendencies continue to hold sway there. The parent company of this thing goes way back to 1919, and that's when the Cuban Alcohol Refining Company acquired some land. And then in September the 30th, they opened the Santa Cruz distillery, and in 1937, that became the property of the Cuban Industrial Alcohol Distillery Company. And then in the 1940s, the distillery started to develop and make rums, right? In 1946, they initiated the Legendario brand. It kind of went on and on and on, but the Legendario has never really been out of production ever since. It continues to be a brand name to this day. They started to advertise on posters in 1952. In 1989, a slightly smaller, still a bit tubbier than this one, but a slightly slimmer, taller bottle was introduced. And I think in 2010, they tweaked the bottles yet again to this kind of thing. So that's probably when I got this. Now, there's a Spanish company out of Valencia called Comercio Exterior Valenciano S.A. They became interested in the Legendario rums, and they got the contract, or they got the trademark rights to export this and distribute it around the world, and they're probably still the ones who are doing it. I think it does come from any one of 6 distilleries in Cuba, and then they ship the bulk over. I'm not actually sure where the bottling is taking place. It could actually be in Europe. I'm really not sure. I never got the straight of it. But here's the thing: the label of this thing is entirely in Spanish. There's no English on this thing anywhere at all. And if that's the case, then it's very likely that it's actually still being done in Cuba. I could be wrong about that, but it just kind of makes sense to me. And there's nothing that tells me any way different, right? Another thing that I want to tell you about this is that there's actually nutritional information here, which is something that a lot of people think that alcohol should provide. Right, and here they have things like calories 284, kilojoules 1176, proteins 11.11%, carbon, I guess, materia grasa 0%. So no sugars in this thing, and they actually do make a point of that to this day. So essentially, the marketing material suggests that the bottle has this slender, graceful outline of the royal palm, which is Cuba's natural tree, and the unmistakable lines kind of talk to the way that Cuban women are supposed to look like. We can argue about that. I mean, I kind of doubt it, But the thing is, as I said before, the rum isn't being made now. Now, they have a 9-year-old, they have a gold rum, they have aged white rum, they have the previous record holder, which was their special, which was the Gran Reserva, 15-year-old, and now they have a really special one called the Very Old Reserva Limited Edition, which they never say how old it is. These are all blends and so on. And there is an Elixir de Cuba. If I had to guess, the Elixir of Cuba is the one that replaced this one, because there's no Gran Anejo in there anymore. If it really comes down to it, I really want to know more about the national cane alcohol, which is like an aguardiente, a cane juice alcohol that they produce. I've never seen it, but I really would like to try it one day. I can't pretend entirely that the rum itself is completely to my taste, but for those who still find it, I think you can get it for a reasonably cheap price. Like I said, I bought mine for about $30. I think that you could probably do fairly well with it. And that's about it for now. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next time. Take care.